Backward living occurs when you begin to see things all backward and all wrong. And that happens when you forget God. Take a look at Ezekiel chapter 29. In Ezekiel chapter 29, God speaks to the king of Egypt, Pharaoh Hophra. And God says to him in verse 2, I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that lies in the midst of its streams. This is a crocodile he's describing, and a crocodile ruled the Nile. And it's interesting that the prayers of the Egyptian people prayed that the Pharaoh would be like a crocodile and that he would just devour the enemies. But it says, interesting, he says, the crocodile that says, my Nile is my own. I made it for myself. Now that is a backward thought. It's a thought. It's a word. And God has a problem with it. There's a big problem when the king of Pharaoh says, I made the Nile. I created the Nile. God created the Nile. And the Nile made Egypt, which made the Pharaoh. You see, without the Nile, there's no fertile soil. You just literally have desert, the Sahara Desert. It's the only thing that separates it from the Sahara Desert is the Nile. It floods its banks and really makes the most lush place in the world at the time. The Nile was also transportation for all the crops, all the goods, all the great things that they were exporting. That's transportation. The Nile was their drinking water. The Nile was everything to Egypt. Without the Nile, there was no Egypt, there was no Pharaoh. But he says, no, I made the Nile. That's a big problem, taking credit for what God did. He says, I'm going to destroy you. In fact, 4 chapters on the destruction of Egypt. Are you taking credit for what God has done in your life? Are you taking credit for your job? Well, I've worked hard. Well, I got this opportunity because I did this. Have you forgotten God? Are you taking credit for the money you have? I brought myself up by my bootstraps. Really? Where'd those come from anyway? Who gave you the energy to even pull your pants up today? Who gave you breath today? You taking credit for your good health? It's because I eat right and I exercise and I do this and I do this. Or really, how do you keep yourself from having a stroke tonight? How do you keep yourself from your heart stopping tonight? My skills. I've honed my skills. Really? Who gave you the kernel to start with? My goodness. My salvation. I pleased God. No. You did nothing. Neither did I. It's all mercy, all grace. Any goodness in me or in you came from God. We've got to be very careful of the thoughts we let go through our head. And we got to be very careful of the words that come out of our mouth, because God is seeing both. Seeing your thoughts, He's hearing your words. He's taking note. He says, Hophra, you know what? You're about done. You who think you created the Nile, you're about to meet the creator of the Nile. And with what you've said, it's not going to be a good meeting. You and I have to be very careful to give God glory in everything.